sustained such horrifying head injuries. Not only that, the sudden change in pressure would cause the air inside the victims to expand rapidly, rupturing their lungs instantly. If explosive decompression can explain what happened to both planes, the team must discover exactly what caused the weakness in the structure of the fuselage. But a failure in the aluminium skin seems implausible. The manufacturer's own tests show the natural life expectancy of the fuselage is over 10,000 flights, many more than the number flown by the two crashed planes. Nevertheless, Sir Arnold is not a man to leave any stone unturned. He decides to put the entire airframe to the test. Before testing begins, the team look closely at the Comet design. They discover that to withstand the stress caused by repeated pressurizations, the skin of the aircraft must be immensely strong, but it must also be extremely light. In order to achieve this, de Havilland developed a lightweight aluminium alloy skin, just over 0.5 millimeter thick.
The Comet's skin thickness was as thin as the designers dared go to withstand the cabin pressurization, and it was fixed by how little they thought they could get away with.
Sir Arnold devises a test to assess the strength of the plane's fuselage. The experiment is on a completely different scale to anything they have attempted before. It requires the construction of a massive water tank, measuring 34 meters long by 7 meters wide and 5 meters deep. Working non-stop, it takes a team of engineers 6 weeks to complete.
The team at the Royal Aircraft Establishment are working really hard. They're working 24 hours a day, they're working shifts, they're sleeping on site. They are a very dedicated team.
By May 29th, it's ready. The engines and cabin upholstery of a Comet are stripped out. The empty plane is gently maneuvered into the water tank, with the wings protruding on either side. Engineers fill the tank and the plane with water. When they are both full, they force more water into the plane, pressurizing it as if it were flying. After 5 minutes, engineers reduce the pressure. Each test puts the same amount of strain into the aircraft as a single flight at 12,000 meters. Sir Arnold plans to test the fuselage to destruction. It could take up to 5 months. The experiment runs 24/7. Using 1950s technology, it's a grueling task.
Today we wouldn't do a water tank test. We'd actually use computer modeling and computer simulation to understand how the aircraft would behave.
As the tests continue, there are other lines of inquiry. In mid-June, 5 months after the crash of Flight 781, the team assembled 2/3 of the fuselage onto the wooden frame. Half a wing lies on the floor. It's now clear from the tears in the metal that the aircraft has indeed decompressed violently and blown apart at the seams. By following the fractures back to where they started, they think the initial failure was probably at the front of the fuselage, somewhere between the cabin and the cockpit. It seems as if the tail and rear fuselage then came away from the main cabin. The rear wing structure followed, and then the outer wingtips. The cockpit broke away as the plane plummeted to Earth, and finally fuel from the wings set the debris ablaze. But the exact cause of this tragedy is still a mystery. Then, on June 24th, Sir Arnold Hall gets a call that changes everything. The team running the water tank test has had a major breakthrough. Less than a month after testing began, after the equivalent of just 3,000 flights, the Comet fuselage ruptures. Engineers immediately drain the tank, and Sir Arnold Hall inspects the damage. There is a massive tear in the aircraft's skin, 2 meters long and 1 meter deep. The tear follows the line of the plane's windows and doors. It's a shocking but vital turning point. They have uncovered a major weakness in the structure of the comet. The entire fleet seems to be fatally flawed.
I think everybody was thunderstruck. De Havilland certainly were thunderstruck because they didn't expect a comet airframe to fail so soon in its life.
But what triggered such a dramatic failure? There's one prime suspect, a phenomenon known as metal fatigue. It's something Paul Withy knows well.
This is a piece of aluminium sheet similar to that which was used on the comet skin, but much thinner. One cycle of load isn't going to fail it at all. But if I repeatedly load it, like this...
Fatigue is caused when a metal is repeatedly flexed one way and then the other.
There you can just see it's about 3 or 4 millimeters across the sheet.
After a while, minute cracks start to form.
Cracks growing further and further across the sample.
The cracks steadily increase in size, and eventually the part fails. But there are two problems with this explanation. Metal fatigue leaves a telltale microscopic pattern on the surface of the metal. Although in the 1950s, the technology for detecting this pattern is in its infancy, none of the parts reclaimed from the sea seem to show any sign of it. Secondly, before the comet went into service, the manufacturers did extensive fatigue tests to find out how the fuselage would behave under repeated pressurizations. It passed with flying colors. Sir Arnold knows he must come up with hard evidence to prove the theory. He must find a part of Flight 781 that shows signs of the fatigue.
The piece of evidence that Sir Arnold needed above all other was that source of fatigue crack growth that he knew was there in the airframe somewhere.
A single piece of wreckage is all that's needed to validate the entire investigation. But this crucial evidence still lies at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. It's 1954, and investigator Sir Arnold Hall believes that the cause of the two comet crashes is a rupture in the plane's lightweight skin. After a unique pressure test on the comet's cabin, the team examined the 2-meter split that has ripped along the side of the fuselage. They make some frightening discoveries. By tracing the tear back, they find it starts at the forward escape hatch. This is not surprising. Stress to the aircraft should be evenly spread throughout the fuselage. But when a door or window is cut into the plane, it weakens the structure, and the stress concentrates around the weakened areas. To investigate further, they rig another aircraft with strain gauges designed to measure stress in the airframe. The results are shocking. During flight, the stress to the skin around the plane's windows and doors reaches 70% of its total strength, 4 times greater than the rest of the aircraft's skin. This is dangerously high and twice what the designers intended. Then the team discover an even more worrying detail. The supports around the windows are riveted, not glued as designed. The problem is, the rivets are punched into the metal, not drilled. This technique creates tiny manufacturing defects, which with repeated flying can turn into fatigue cracks.
The presence of manufacturing cracks in a highly stressed area meant that you were highly likely to suffer from fatigue failure.
Sir Arnold and his team know they're getting close, but they have not yet conclusively solved the mystery. They've found no trace of metal fatigue on any of the wreckage from Flight 781. Then, on August 12th, 7 months after Flight 781 crashed, an Italian trawler snags a large piece of wreckage. It turns out to be a section of the roof from 781's fuselage.